we journey back to a time of lantern light and ancient stone halls, where a young seeker of truth walked with a mind full of questions and a heart full of courage. She lived in a world of scholars and emperors, where wisdom was treasured and strength came not from the sword, but from the clarity of one's convictions. As the stars rise above her city, take a breath. Let it soften your shoulders and allow your body to settle into the quiet of the night. With each slow inhale, feel the world around you fade into stillness. With each gentle exhale, sink deeper into calm. Now close your eyes and let her story, a story of quiet bravery, deep learning, and a spirit that glowed brighter than any crown, guide you toward rest. Long, long ago, in the beautiful city of Alexandria in Egypt, there lived a girl named Catherine. This was nearly 1,800 years ago, when Alexandria was one of the most magnificent cities in the entire world. Catherine was born into a royal family. Her father was a nobleman, perhaps even a governor, and their home was a palace with marble columns that gleamed white in the Egyptian sun. Gardens filled with date palms and flowering plants surrounded their home, and fountains splashed musically in the courtyards. But what made Catherine special wasn't her palace, or her fine clothes, or her royal blood. What made her special was her mind. From the time she was very small, Catherine wanted to learn everything. While other children played games in the gardens, Catherine would sit with scrolls and books, her dark eyes moving quickly across the words. While other girls her age learned only what was considered proper for young ladies, Catherine insisted on studying everything the boys studied, and more. "Why do the stars move across the sky?" she would ask her tutors. "How do numbers work? What makes plants grow? Why do people speak different languages?" Her tutors were amazed. This young princess had a brilliant mind, perhaps one of the brightest they had ever encountered. So they taught her everything they knew: mathematics and geometry, astronomy and music, medicine and philosophy. She learned to speak many languages, Greek, Latin, and several others. Alexandria was the perfect place for someone who loved learning. The city had the most famous library in the ancient world, the Great Library of Alexandria. It contained hundreds of thousands of scrolls, books filled with all the knowledge humanity had collected. Catherine spent countless hours there, reading by the light that streamed through high windows, surrounded by the sweet smell of papyrus and ink. "What are you reading today, young princess?" the librarians would ask. "Plato's Dialogues," she might answer, or Euclid's Geometry, or the medical writings of Galen. By the time Catherine was 14 years old, she could debate philosophy with the greatest scholars in Alexandria. She could solve complex mathematical problems. She could discuss the nature of the universe, the meaning of justice, and the question of what makes a good life. But despite all her knowledge, Catherine felt something was missing. All these books, all these ideas, they were beautiful and fascinating, but they didn't answer the deepest question in her heart. What is truth? What is the meaning of everything? Then one night, Catherine had a dream that would change her life forever. In her dream, Catherine found herself in a place of extraordinary light. Before her stood a beautiful lady holding a child. The lady's eyes were kind and wise, and she smiled at Catherine. "Do you wish to meet my son?" the lady asked. "Yes," Catherine breathed, sensing that this child was someone extraordinary. But when the child turned to look at her, he turned his face away. "She is not yet ready," he said gently. "She is wise in the world's wisdom, but she does not yet know the highest wisdom." Catherine woke with a start, her heart pounding. The dream felt more real than anything she'd ever experienced. But what did it mean? She told her mother about the dream, and her mother grew thoughtful. "I have a friend," she said carefully, "a Christian priest who lives quietly in the city. Perhaps he could help you understand. Now you must understand, dear child, that being a Christian in those days was dangerous." The Roman Empire ruled Egypt, and the emperors often persecuted Christians, arresting them, imprisoning them, sometimes even killing them for their faith. So Christians often met in secret, in hidden rooms and quiet places. But Catherine's desire to understand her dream overcame any fear. She went to meet the priest, a kind old man with gentle eyes and weathered hands. He listened to her dream carefully, then nodded. "The lady you saw was Mary, the mother of Jesus Christ," he explained. "And the child was Jesus himself, the Son of God." "Tell me about him," Catherine said, leaning forward eagerly. "Tell me everything." And so the priest began to teach her. He told her about how God, who created the entire universe, loved humanity so much that he came to earth as a human being. He told her about Jesus, who healed the sick, taught about love and forgiveness, and welcomed everyone, rich and poor, educated and simple, powerful and weak. "He is the Logos," the priest explained, using the Greek word that Catherine knew from her philosophy studies. "The divine reason, the word through which all things were made. All the truth you've been seeking in your books, it all finds its source and meaning in him." Catherine's brilliant mind immediately grasped something profound. All the philosophy she'd studied, Plato's ideas about the good, Aristotle's teachings about truth, the Stoics' wisdom about virtue, it all seemed to point towards something greater, someone greater. "In Jesus," the priest continued, "the highest wisdom and the deepest love meet together. He is truth itself, made human." Catherine felt as though her entire life had been leading to this moment. All her years of study, all her questions, all her searching, they had brought her here. "I want to follow him," she said simply. "I want to be his." The priest smiled. "Then let us prepare you for baptism." Catherine spent the following weeks learning about the Christian faith. She read the Gospels and the letters of Paul. She learned about the early Christians and how they lived. And the more she learned, the more certain she became. Finally, in a simple ceremony in a hidden chapel, Catherine was baptized. As the water was poured over her head, she felt a profound peace and joy flood through her entire being. That night, she had another dream. The same beautiful lady appeared again, holding the child. But this time, when the child looked at Catherine, he smiled at her. A smile so full of love that it seemed to light up everything. "Now she is ready," he said, and he placed a ring on her finger. A mystical ring that Catherine understood meant she belonged completely to him. When Catherine woke, she knew with absolute certainty what her life was meant for. She was not just a princess or a scholar anymore. She was a bride of Christ, dedicated to him entirely, and she would never marry any earthly prince or nobleman. When Catherine told her parents she would never marry, they were shocked and upset. "You must marry," her father insisted. "It is your duty as a princess." But Catherine was gentle and firm. "I belong to Christ alone," she said. "No earthly marriage can compare to that." Her parents, though they didn't understand, eventually accepted her decision. Catherine continued her studies, but now everything she learned, she saw in a new light, as pointing toward the glory and wisdom of God. Several years passed peacefully. Catherine lived quietly in her family's palace, continuing her studies, helping the poor in secret, and meeting with other Christians for worship in hidden places. But then, in the year 305 AD, everything changed. The Roman Emperor Maxentius came to Alexandria. Now Maxentius was a proud and cruel ruler. He demanded that everyone in the empire worship the Roman gods and make sacrifices to them. Those who refused, especially Christians, faced terrible punishment. When Maxentius arrived in Alexandria, he ordered a great festival to honor the Roman gods. All the citizens were commanded to attend and to offer sacrifices. The city square was filled with altars where animals were being killed as offerings, and the air was thick with smoke from burning incense. Catherine, now 18 years old, heard about what was happening. She heard that Christians were being dragged from their homes and forced to participate. She heard that those who refused were being arrested, tortured, even killed. And something rose up in her heart, a holy courage she had never felt before. "I must go to the emperor," she announced. Her friends and family were horrified. "You'll be killed," they cried. "Catherine, you're young and brilliant and beautiful. You have your whole life ahead of you. Don't throw it away." But Catherine shook her head. "What good is all my learning if I don't use it to speak the truth? What good is my life if I live it in cowardice? I must speak." She put on her finest robes, the clothes of a princess, and walked straight to the palace where Emperor Maxentius was staying. The guards tried to stop her, but she spoke with such authority that they let her pass. She walked into the great hall where the emperor sat on his throne, surrounded by soldiers, advisors, and nobles. "Emperor Maxentius," Catherine said in a clear, strong voice that carried through the hall. "I am Catherine, daughter of Costus. I come to speak with you about the injustice you are committing." The entire hall fell silent. Everyone stared at this young woman who had dared to challenge the emperor himself. Maxentius was furious, but also intrigued. This was no ordinary girl. She carried herself like royalty and spoke like a scholar. "Who are you to question me?" he demanded. "I am a seeker of truth," Catherine replied, "and I must tell you that you are requiring people to worship false gods, gods who are nothing but stone and metal, who cannot see or hear or speak. There is only one true God, the creator of heaven and earth, and his Son Jesus Christ, who became human to save us." Maxentius laughed mockingly. "A Christian? And you dare to come here and preach to me?" "I come not to preach," Catherine said calmly, "but to reason with you. You are an educated man. You claim to value wisdom and philosophy. Let us discuss this rationally." And there, in the emperor's throne room, Catherine began to speak. She used all the philosophy she had learned, all the logic and rhetoric she had mastered. She explained why the pagan gods made no sense, how they were contradictory and foolish. She demonstrated the rationality of believing in one creator God. She spoke of Jesus and how his life fulfilled ancient prophecies and revealed divine love. The nobles and advisors listened in astonishment. Never had they heard anyone speak with such wisdom and courage, least of all a young woman standing before an emperor who could have her killed with a word. Even Maxentius was impressed, though it made him angry. He couldn't answer her arguments. He couldn't defeat her logic, and that made him look weak in front of his court. "Enough," he finally shouted. "I will not be lectured by a girl." But he couldn't simply kill her, not after she had made such a strong impression on his court. He needed to discredit her first, to defeat her arguments publicly. "I will summon the greatest philosophers and scholars in the empire," Maxentius declared. 50 of them. They will debate you and prove you wrong. Then we will see how clever you really are." Catherine stood quietly, unafraid. "I will gladly speak with them," she said. "Truth has nothing to fear from examination." Word spread throughout Alexandria and beyond. The emperor had challenged a young Christian princess to debate 50 of the empire's greatest philosophers. People were amazed, scandalized, fascinated. Would this brilliant girl survive, or would she be humiliated and destroyed? Maxentius summoned philosophers from across the empire. They came from Rome, from Athens, from Antioch, grey-bearded scholars who had spent their entire lives studying philosophy, rhetoric, and logic. 50 of the most learned men in the Roman world gathered to debate one 18-year-old woman. The night before the debate, Catherine knelt in prayer. "Lord," she whispered, "I don't trust in my own wisdom. I trust in you. You are truth itself. If I speak, let it be your truth speaking through me." She felt a deep peace settle over her. She wasn't afraid. The next morning, the great hall was packed with people, nobles, soldiers, citizens, even some secret Christians who came disguised. Everyone wanted to witness this extraordinary event. The 50 philosophers sat in a semicircle, looking confidently at the young woman standing before them. They had their scrolls and their notes. They had their years of experience and their formidable reputations. What did this girl have? Emperor Maxentius sat on his throne, a cruel smile on his face. He expected Catherine to be utterly crushed. "Begin," he commanded. The first philosopher stood. He was elderly and famous, known throughout the empire. He began to argue for the Roman gods, using complex logical structures and referring to ancient texts. Catherine listened carefully, then she responded, and her voice was clear and calm. "You speak of Zeus and Jupiter as if they were truly gods," she said. "But consider what the poets say about them. They tell stories of these so-called gods lying, committing adultery, fighting among themselves like jealous children. If these beings truly behave this way, they cannot be divine, for divinity must be perfect. If the stories are false, then why worship beings whose true nature you don't even know?" The first philosopher frowned, trying to respond, but Catherine continued, weaving together philosophy and logic with such skill that he found himself unable to answer. One by one, the philosophers stood to challenge her. They argued about the nature of the gods, about fate and free will, about the purpose of existence, and one by one, Catherine answered them. She quoted Plato back to them, showing how even the great pagan philosophers had glimpsed truths that pointed toward one supreme God. She used Aristotle's logic to demonstrate the necessity of a first cause, an unmoved mover who created everything. She spoke of the beauty and order of the cosmos as evidence of a divine intelligence. And then she spoke of Jesus, how in him all the wisdom the philosophers sought was made flesh, how he was the Logos they had theorized about actually become human, how he showed that the highest wisdom and the deepest love were one and the same. The hours passed, the sun moved across the sky, the debate continued, and slowly something extraordinary began to happen. The philosophers found they couldn't answer Catherine's arguments. More than that, they found themselves convinced by them. Her words resonated with something deep in their souls, something they had been seeking their entire lives without knowing it. One philosopher, his eyes bright with tears, stood up. "Emperor Maxentius," he said, his voice shaking, "I cannot argue against this young woman any longer. She speaks truth. The Christian faith she describes is reasonable, beautiful, and true. I wish to become a Christian myself." A gasp ran through the hall. Maxentius turned purple with rage. But the philosopher wasn't finished. "For years I have sought wisdom. Today I have found it, or rather, it has found me. I cannot deny what my reason tells me is true." Then another philosopher stood. "I agree," he said. "In all my years of study, I have never encountered such wisdom. This is more than philosophy. This is revelation." And then another stood, and another, until all 50 philosophers, every single one, declared that they believed Catherine's words and wanted to become Christians. The hall erupted in chaos. Maxentius was screaming in fury. The guards drew their swords. The crowd was shouting, some in amazement, some in fear, some in joy. Catherine stood in the center of it all, calm and peaceful, tears streaming down her face. She hadn't defeated these philosophers. She had won them to truth. Emperor Maxentius was absolutely enraged. Not only had Catherine humiliated him by defeating his philosophers, but she had converted them to Christianity right in front of his court. He had never been so angry in his life. "Seize them!" he screamed, pointing at the 50 philosophers. "Seize them all!" The guards grabbed the philosophers who went peacefully, many of them still discussing theology with each other, even as they were dragged away. Within hours, Maxentius had all 50 of them executed. These brilliant men, who had come to Alexandria as proud scholars, died as Christian martyrs, giving their lives for the truth they had only just discovered. When Catherine heard what had happened, she wept. But she also rejoiced, knowing that these men had found the truth they'd been seeking their entire lives, even if it cost them everything. Now Maxentius turned his full attention to Catherine. He couldn't kill her immediately. She was too well known now, and many people admired her courage. He needed a different strategy. He summoned Catherine back to the palace. This time, he tried a new approach. Instead of anger, he tried charm. "Catherine," he said smoothly, "you are truly remarkable. Your beauty is matched only by your intelligence. I am deeply impressed with you." Catherine said nothing, just watched him carefully. "I have a proposal," Maxentius continued. "Renounce this Christian foolishness, and I will make you my empress. You will rule beside me, the most powerful woman in the Roman Empire. You will have wealth beyond imagination, power, honor, everything a woman could desire." He leaned forward. "Or, if you prefer, I will make you my chief priestess. You will serve in the greatest temples, honored by all. Think of it, Catherine, you could have anything you want. All you have to do is make a simple sacrifice to our gods." Catherine looked at him with pity. "Emperor," she said gently, "you offer me things that will fade and crumble like dust. I belong to an eternal king. I am already a bride, the bride of Christ. No earthly honor can compare to that. I would rather die than betray him." Maxentius's face darkened. "You foolish girl, do you know what I can do to you?" "I know," Catherine said quietly, "but I also know what you cannot do. You cannot separate me from the love of Christ. You cannot touch my soul. You cannot take away what truly matters." "Then you choose death?" Maxentius hissed. "I choose life," Catherine replied. "True life, eternal life. If death comes, it is only a doorway to that life." Maxentius slammed his fist on the throne. "Take her away, lock her in the dungeon. We'll see how brave she is after days without food or water." The guards seized Catherine and dragged her down into the dark dungeons beneath the palace. They threw her into a cell, a tiny room with stone walls and no windows. The only light came from a small opening high above. Then they locked the door and left her in darkness. Catherine sat in the cold darkness of her cell. She could hear water dripping somewhere and the scurrying of rats in the shadows. The air was damp and smelled of mold and despair. But Catherine wasn't in despair. Instead, she began to pray. She prayed for the emperor that his heart might soften. She prayed for the philosophers who had died, thanking God that they had found truth. She prayed for all the Christians in Alexandria who were being persecuted. And she prayed for strength to remain faithful no matter what came. As she prayed, something wonderful happened. The darkness of the cell seemed to fill with light, not the light of a torch or lamp, but a gentle, warm radiance that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. And Catherine realized she wasn't alone. She could sense presences in the cell with her, angels she somehow knew, sent by God to comfort her. And more than that, she felt the presence of Christ himself surrounding her with his love. "Lord," she whispered, "you are here." "I am always here," seemed to come the gentle answer in her heart. "I will never leave you. I will never abandon you." The guards had been ordered not to give Catherine any food or water. Maxentius wanted to break her spirit through starvation and thirst. But something miraculous happened. A dove appeared in her cell, bringing her food, and water seemed to flow from the very stones when she was thirsty. Days passed, but instead of growing weak, Catherine seemed to grow stronger. Her face radiated peace and joy. When the guards would peer through the small window in her door, they would see her praying, or singing hymns, or simply sitting in quiet peace as if she were in a palace rather than a dungeon. Some of the guards were deeply troubled by this. One guard, a rough soldier named Porphyrius, spoke to his companions. "This is no ordinary prisoner," he said. "I've guarded many criminals, many rebels, many madmen, but this woman, there's something different about her. She has a peace I've never seen." Word of Catherine's imprisonment spread through the palace. Even the Empress, Maxentius's own wife, heard about the remarkable prisoner in the dungeon. The Empress was named Valeria, and she was a kind woman who had always been troubled by her husband's cruelty. "I want to see this Catherine," the Empress told Porphyrius. "Take me to her cell tonight when the Emperor is asleep." That night, Porphyrius and the Empress crept down to the dungeon. When they unlocked Catherine's cell, they found her surrounded by that mysterious light, her face radiant with joy. "Catherine," the Empress said, "I have heard such amazing things about you. Tell me, how can you be so peaceful in such a terrible place? What is the source of your courage?" And there, in that dark dungeon cell, Catherine shared her faith with the Empress. She spoke of Christ's love, of how he had suffered and died to save humanity, of how he offered eternal life to all who believed in him. The Empress listened, tears streaming down her face. "I want this peace," she said. "I want this joy you have. Tell me how to find it." "Simply open your heart to Christ," Catherine said gently. "Believe in him, and you will find everything your soul has been longing for." Right there, in the dungeon, the Empress Valeria became a Christian. Porphyrius, standing guard at the door, heard everything, and he too found himself believing. The words Catherine spoke resonated with truth, and he knew with absolute certainty that he had encountered something real and sacred. "I believe too," Porphyrius said, kneeling beside the Empress. Catherine baptized them both with water from her cell, and they left the dungeon transformed, knowing their lives would never be the same. When Maxentius discovered what had happened, that his own wife had converted to Christianity, his rage knew no bounds. He ordered both Empress Valeria and Porphyrius arrested and executed immediately. They died bravely, witnesses to the faith they had only just embraced. Now Maxentius was determined to break Catherine once and for all. He ordered her brought from the dungeon to face a new torture, something so terrible that surely it would make her renounce her faith. His craftsmen had built a horrible device, 4 wheels covered with sharp spikes and blades. Catherine would be tied between the wheels, and as they spun in opposite directions, the spikes would tear her body apart. It was meant to be a slow, agonizing death. When Catherine was brought out to face this torture, a huge crowd had gathered. Some came out of cruel curiosity. Others came because they secretly admired Catherine and hoped she might somehow be saved. Christians in the crowd prayed desperately for a miracle. Catherine looked at the spiked wheels calmly. She wasn't afraid. She had already given her life to Christ, and she knew that nothing, not even death, could separate her from his love. "This is your last chance," Maxentius said. "Renounce your faith, and I will spare you this torture." Catherine looked at the emperor with compassion. "You think you can frighten me with death?" she said gently. "Death is not my enemy. Death is my doorway to eternal life with my beloved Lord. Do what you will." The soldiers began to tie her to the wheels. The crowd held its breath. This brave young woman was about to be torn apart before their eyes. But just as the wheels began to spin, something extraordinary happened. A great wind seemed to come from nowhere, or perhaps from heaven itself. Lightning flashed from the clear sky and struck the spiked wheels. With a tremendous crash, the wheels shattered into pieces, sending splinters and shards flying in all directions. The crowd gasped in amazement. Many fell to their knees. The soldiers stumbled backward in fear. Even Maxentius turned pale. Catherine stood unharmed, the ropes that had bound her falling away. She looked up at the sky, her face filled with gratitude. "Thank you, Lord," she whispered. Hundreds of people in the crowd immediately began praising the Christian God. Many of them declared then and there that they wanted to become Christians. Catherine's courage and the miracle they had witnessed convinced them that her faith was true. But Maxentius was beyond reason now. His pride had been wounded too many times. He had been defied, humiliated, and defeated by this young woman again and again, and now even his torture device had been destroyed by what seemed like divine intervention. "Enough!" he screamed. "I'll waste no more time with elaborate tortures. Execute her! Behead her now!" The soldiers looked at each other uncomfortably. None of them wanted to kill this remarkable young woman, but they were soldiers, and they had been given an order. Catherine was led outside the city to a place of execution. A large crowd followed, some weeping, some praying, some simply stunned by everything they had witnessed. When they reached the place, Catherine turned to the crowd one last time. "Do not weep for me," she said, her voice clear and strong. "I go to my beloved Lord, to eternal joy. Instead, rejoice, and remember what you have seen, that faith is stronger than fear, that love is more powerful than death, that truth cannot be destroyed, no matter how hard tyrants try." Then she knelt down, bowed her head, and began to pray. "Lord Jesus Christ, receive my spirit, welcome me into your eternal kingdom, and bless all these people who have witnessed your power today." The executioner raised his sword. It fell, and Catherine's earthly life ended. But here, dear child, is where the story becomes even more wonderful. When Catherine died, witnesses said that instead of blood, a white milk-like substance flowed from her wound, a sign they believed of her purity and holiness. And at the moment of her death, many people in the crowd reported seeing angels descending from heaven. According to ancient stories, these angels took Catherine's body and carried it far away to the highest mountain in the Sinai Peninsula, Mount Sinai, the same mountain where Moses had received the 10 Commandments centuries before. There, on that sacred mountain, the angels placed Catherine's body in a hidden cave, as if to say that this brave young woman belonged not just to earth, but to heaven, not just to one time, but to all eternity. Years passed, decades, centuries, the Roman Empire fell, Christianity spread throughout the world, and Catherine's story was remembered and retold wherever Christians gathered. People spoke of the teenage princess who had stood up to an emperor. They told of the brilliant scholar who had converted 50 philosophers. They remembered the young woman whose faith had been stronger than torture and death. Mothers told the story to their daughters to inspire them to be brave and wise. Teachers told it to their students to show them that truth is worth defending. And Christians everywhere looked to Catherine as an example of courage, learning, and unwavering faith. About 500 years after Catherine's death, monks living at the foot of Mount Sinai reported a miraculous discovery. An angel appeared to them and showed them where Catherine's body lay, still preserved after all those centuries. The monks built a beautiful monastery at that spot, the monastery of Saint Catherine, which still stands today, nearly 1,700 years later, one of the oldest Christian monasteries in the world. Catherine was declared a saint, Saint Catherine of Alexandria. She became known as the patron saint of students, teachers, philosophers, and anyone who uses knowledge in service of truth. Artists painted her image, showing her with a wheel, the torture device that couldn't harm her, and wearing a crown, for she was royalty both of earth and heaven. But perhaps most importantly, Catherine's story inspired countless others to be brave, to stand up for what they believed in, to use their minds in service of truth, and to never be afraid to speak out against injustice. Now, as we come to the end of our story, let's think about what Catherine's life means for us today. First, Catherine shows us that knowledge is a gift to be used wisely. She didn't learn just to show off or to become rich or famous. She learned because she loved truth, and she used everything she learned to help others and to stand up for what was right. Whatever you learn, whether it's reading and writing, science and math, music and art, remember that knowledge is meant to serve love. Second, Catherine teaches us about courage. She was afraid sometimes. She was human, after all. But she didn't let her fear stop her from doing what was right. She stood before an emperor and spoke truth even when it was dangerous. She faced torture and death with peace in her heart. Courage doesn't mean not being afraid. Courage means doing what's right even when you are afraid. Third, Catherine shows us the power of gentleness combined with strength. She didn't speak to the emperor or the philosophers with hatred or anger. She spoke with reason, with kindness, with truth. She was strong but never cruel. She was firm but never harsh. That's a powerful combination. Gentle strength, strong gentleness. Fourth, Catherine's life reminds us that some things are worth more than comfort or safety. She could have lived a comfortable life as a princess. She could have saved her life by denying her faith. But she knew that integrity, staying true to what you believe, is more important than comfort. Sometimes standing up for what's right costs us something, but it's worth it. And finally, Catherine teaches us that we're never too young to make a difference. She was only 18 years old when she stood before the emperor. Many people told her she was too young, too inexperienced, that she should leave such matters to older, more important people. But Catherine knew that truth doesn't depend on age. Courage doesn't depend on experience. If something is right, then it's right, whether you're 8 or 18 or 80. So now, dear child, as you prepare for sleep, think about Catherine's story. You might not live in a palace. You might never meet an emperor. You probably won't be asked to debate 50 philosophers, but you will face your own choices about courage and truth. You'll have chances to speak up when you see something wrong, even when it's hard. You'll have opportunities to use what you learn to help others. You'll meet people who need someone brave enough to stand beside them. And here's something wonderful. The same wisdom and courage that filled Catherine's heart is available to you too. You don't have to be a princess or a genius. You just have to be willing to love truth, to be brave when bravery is needed, and to use whatever gifts you have, whether great or small, in service of good. Maybe tomorrow you'll stand up for a classmate who's being picked on. Maybe you'll ask questions in school not just to get good grades, but because you really want to understand. Maybe you'll speak the truth even when lying would be easier. Maybe you'll choose to do what's right even when it costs you something. These might seem like small things compared to debating philosophers or facing emperors, but they're not small at all. They're exactly the kind of courage and wisdom Catherine showed, just in the everyday moments of ordinary life. And who knows, maybe one day, years from now, someone will tell a story about you, about the child who was brave when bravery was needed, about the young person who stood up for truth, about someone who learned and grew and used their gifts to make the world a little bit better. Catherine's story didn't end on that day of her death. It continued in everyone who heard about her and was inspired to be brave. It continued in all the students and teachers and seekers of truth who took courage from her example. It continues tonight in this very moment as you hear her story and think about what it means for your own life. As you close your eyes now, picture Catherine, not suffering but joyful. See her as she truly is now. Fully alive, fully herself, reunited with the Lord she loved so much that she gave everything for him. See her surrounded by light, by angels, by all the truth and beauty she spent her life seeking. And know that the same light that filled her heart is offered to you. The same courage that strengthened her can strengthen you. The same wisdom she sought is available to anyone who truly desires it. Sleep peacefully, dear child. Dream of brave things and true things and beautiful things. And when you wake tomorrow, remember Catherine's example. Be curious and keep learning. Be brave and stand for truth. Be kind, but also be strong. And never let anyone tell you you're too young to make a difference. Sweet dreams, little one. May angels watch over you as they watched over Catherine, and may you wake tomorrow ready to write your own story of courage, wisdom, and love. The end, and may your own brave story be just beginning.